Alara Mason learned early that love was not always gentle. Growing up, she watched her mother love in silence, folding pain into smiles, swallowing disappointment like medicine taken daily. From those quiet observations, Alara formed her own understanding of affection, that love was endurance, patience, and sacrifice. It was staying even when staying hurt. So when love finally came knocking at her own door, she did not question the cost. She opened herself fully, unaware that some loves arrive only to teach you how to survive their absence. Before we continue, please like, comment, and subscribe, and tell us where you're watching from. Your support helps these stories reach hearts that need them most. She met Caleb Arins on a Tuesday afternoon that smelled of dust and old books. The university library was unusually crowded, and Alara had claimed her favorite corner table early, determined to finish an essay before sunset. When Caleb approached her, asking softly if the seat across from her was taken, she barely looked up before nodding. It was only when he sat down that she noticed him properly, his careful movements, the faint nervousness in his posture, the kindness resting quietly in his eyes. They spoke for the first time over borrowed pens and shared frustration about deadlines. Caleb laughed easily, but it was a restrained laugh, as if he had learned not to take up too much space. Alara liked that. She had always been drawn to people who carried gentleness like a secret. By the time they parted ways that evening, something unspoken had already begun weaving itself between them. Their friendship unfolded naturally. Caleb started waiting for her after lectures. Alara began saving him a seat without realizing she was doing it. They shared lunches, then dinners, then entire evenings that slipped away unnoticed. Caleb talked about his dreams of becoming an architect, how he wanted to design homes that felt like shelter, not just structures. Alara spoke about writing stories that felt like mirrors, stories that told people they were not alone. Love did not announce itself. It crept in quietly, disguised as comfort. When Caleb finally admitted his feelings, it was not dramatic. There were no flowers, no speeches. He simply said, "I don't know when it happened, but being with you feels like breathing." Alara felt something in her chest loosen, something she had been holding tight for years. She said yes without hesitation, unaware that certainty could coexist with heartbreak. Caleb never made promises. He did not speak about forever or destiny. Instead, he showed up. He held her hand in public. He listened when she spoke. He remembered small details. To Alara, that was enough. She believed love was proven through presence, not words. But cracks began forming long before she noticed them. Caleb's family was polite but distant. His father, Leonard Arins, rarely acknowledged her existence beyond stiff greetings. His mother smiled without warmth. Alara sensed their disapproval but told herself love could bridge any divide. She did not realize that some people measure worth in ways love cannot change. As the months passed, Caleb grew quieter. Stress became his constant excuse. Architecture projects piled up. Family expectations weighed heavily on him. Alara became his refuge, absorbing his frustration, comforting his doubts, reassuring him endlessly. She gave and gave, believing love was meant to feel heavy sometimes. She ignored the way he stopped asking about her writing. She dismissed the growing silences. She convinced herself that understanding meant patience without limits. Naomi Vale noticed the shift immediately. "You look tired all the time," she told Alara one afternoon. "Love shouldn't drain you like this." Alara smiled weakly and defended Caleb, saying he was just overwhelmed. Naomi did not argue. She had learned that people in love often needed experience, not warnings. The first betrayal did not arrive as a confession. It arrived as neglect. Text messages went unanswered for hours, then days. Calls were returned late, rushed, distracted. When Alara expressed concern, Caleb apologized quickly, but never changed. She learned to lower her expectations, to accept crumbs without complaint. She told herself love required compromise, never realizing she was the only one compromising. One night, after waiting hours for Caleb to show up for a planned dinner, Alara sat alone in the restaurant, her phone face down on the table. When he finally arrived, he blamed traffic, exhaustion, life. She smiled and forgave him, even as something inside her quietly broke. The truth revealed itself slowly, painfully. A friend mentioned seeing Caleb with another woman. Too close, too familiar. Alara confronted him gently, her voice trembling. Caleb did not deny it. He only looked tired. Guilty. Relieved. "I didn't know how to tell you," he said. That sentence ended everything. Alara did not cry immediately. She listened as Caleb explained himself, as he spoke about pressure, expectations, confusion. She heard his reasons but felt none of his remorse. Love, she realized, should not require explanations that erase you. She walked away without raising her voice, without begging, without drama. The tears came later, soaking pillows, staining nights, aching in places words could not reach. She mourned not just Caleb, but the version of herself she had abandoned to love him. Returning home felt like failure. Her mother did not say, "I told you so." She simply held Alara as she cried, whispering that pain did not mean weakness. Aunt Miriam reminded her that some relationships existed only to teach us what we deserved. Alara stopped writing. Words felt dangerous now. Too honest, too close to wounds that had not healed. She spent nights replaying memories, wondering where she went wrong, how love turned into loss without warning. Caleb tried to reach out once. She did not respond. Silence became her shield. By the end of that year, Alara understood something she had never learned before. Love written in tears may feel deep, but it is rarely safe. And sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is walk away from a love that asks you to disappear. This was not the end of her story. It was the beginning of her becoming. Healing did not arrive with clarity. It came in fragments, uneven, exhausting, and slow. Alara Mason learned quickly that heartbreak did not end when love ended. It lingered in habits, in empty spaces beside her, in moments when she reached for her phone without thinking. Some mornings she woke up believing she was fine, only for grief to ambush her by afternoon, sharp and unexpected. Returning home felt like retreating from a battle she had not known she was fighting. The familiar walls of her childhood room offered comfort, but they also echoed with questions she did not yet have answers for. Her mother watched her carefully, never pushing, never prying. Mrs. Ruth Mason had learned long ago that pain spoke when it was ready. Alara stopped pretending she was okay. She slept too much. She spoke too little. Food tasted like obligation. Nights were the worst, quiet enough for memories to scream. She replayed moments with Caleb endlessly, searching for the exact point where love began slipping through her fingers. She wondered if she had loved too hard, trusted too freely, believed too deeply. Some days, anger replaced sadness. Other days, guilt followed close behind. She blamed herself for not noticing the signs sooner, for forgiving too easily, for believing presence was the same as commitment. Loving Caleb had taught her how deeply she could feel, but losing him taught her how much she had given away without protection. Naomi visited often. She brought food Alara barely touched and conversation Alara rarely joined. Still, Naomi stayed. She did not demand progress. She understood that healing was not linear, and strength did not always look like movement. "You didn't fail," Naomi said one afternoon, when Alara finally admitted how ashamed she felt. "You loved. That's not a crime." But Alara struggled to believe that. Love felt like a mistake now, something reckless, something foolish. She had written her heart into someone else's hands and watched him drop it without looking back. Trust felt dangerous. Vulnerability felt naive. Weeks passed. Then months. Slowly, Alara began to breathe again. It started with small things. Walking outside without feeling like the world was too loud, sitting in silence without crying, laughing once and not immediately feeling guilty for it. Healing did not erase the pain, but it softened its edges. The ache became duller, more manageable. Writing returned cautiously. At first, Alara only journaled, short sentences, fragmented thoughts, truths she had never spoken aloud. She wrote about loving someone who never fully chose her. She wrote about shrinking herself to fit into a space that kept getting smaller. She wrote about the moment she realized she had been surviving a relationship she thought was love. Those pages changed her. One evening, Aunt Miriam sat beside her, reading quietly as Alara wrote. "Pain," her aunt said softly, "either hardens you or deepens you. You get to choose which." Alara did not respond, but the words stayed with her. Caleb crossed her mind less often now, though he was never completely absent. Some nights, regret tugged at her chest, not because she missed him, but because she had loved him so completely. It frightened her to realize how much power she had given away. She heard through mutual acquaintances that Caleb was struggling. His new relationship had not lasted. His family pressures remained. For a moment, she felt vindicated. Then she felt empty. His regret did not heal her wounds. One afternoon, months after the breakup, Alara ran into him unexpectedly at a bookstore. The encounter lasted less than 10 minutes but felt heavier than years. "You look different," Caleb said quietly. "So do you," she replied. He apologized. Not dramatically. Not fully. He spoke about confusion, fear, mistakes. Alara listened without interruption. When he finished, she nodded once. I forgive you, she said. And she meant it, not for him, but for herself. Forgiveness did not mean reconciliation. It meant release. She walked away lighter, realizing closure did not require agreement, only acceptance. It was during this season of rebuilding that Soren Blake entered her life. There was nothing extraordinary about their first meeting. They met at a small literary event where Alara had been invited to read one of her short pieces. Soren sat in the back row, listening intently. When he approached her afterward, he did not praise her excessively. He simply said, "Your words felt honest." That was enough to make her pause. Their conversations were easy but unforced. Soren asked thoughtful questions and listened without interrupting. He never rushed her answers. He never filled silences unnecessarily. Being around him felt calm, almost unsettling in its gentleness. Alara was cautious. Too cautious, perhaps. She kept emotional distance, revealing little, expecting disappointment. Soren did not push. He respected her boundaries without making her feel guilty for having them. Time passed. Friendship grew. Loving Soren felt unfamiliar because it did not hurt. That terrified her. She waited for the anxiety, the uncertainty, the emotional roller coaster she had mistaken for passion before. It never came. Instead, there was consistency, clarity, peace. She did not know what to do with a love that did not demand sacrifice as proof. Some nights, fear crept in. She wondered if she was broken, if heartbreak had numbed her too deeply to love again. Other nights, she worried that peace was temporary, that pain was only waiting for the right moment to return. Soren noticed her hesitation, but never pressured her for explanations. "You don't owe me readiness," he said once. "Just honesty." That sentence stayed with her. Alara realized she had spent so long trying to be easy to love that she forgot love was meant to feel safe. She was no longer willing to disappear for affection. She wanted to be chosen fully, or not at all. Healing, she learned, was not about forgetting the past. It was about learning from it without letting it define you. And for the first time since Caleb, Alara began to believe that love did not have to hurt to be real. Healing did not announce itself with certainty. Alara Mason did not wake up one morning suddenly whole, suddenly fearless, suddenly ready. Instead, healing arrived quietly, in moments she almost missed. It showed up in the way she no longer flinched when her phone buzzed unexpectedly. In how she laughed without immediately wondering how long the feeling would last. In the fact that she could say Caleb's name now without her chest tightening. Life moved forward, whether she was ready or not. Alara returned to the city with a new sense of intentionality. She took her time unpacking, not just boxes but pieces of herself she had stored away during heartbreak. She rearranged her apartment, donated old clothes, threw away letters she no longer needed to reread. The space began to reflect who she was becoming, lighter, quieter, more honest. Writing flourished again, but differently. Her words were no longer desperate to be understood. They stood confidently on their own. She wrote about women who loved deeply and survived gently. About choosing yourself without apology. About the difference between love that consumes and love that stays. Soren remained present, steady in a way Alara had never experienced before. He did not disappear during her silences. He did not grow distant when she needed space. He showed up the same way every time. And that consistency slowly dismantled her fear. Still, doubt lingered. One evening, as they sat on her balcony watching the city lights blur into night, Alara finally spoke the truth she had been holding back. She told him about Caleb, not the details but the damage. About how loving once had nearly erased her. About how she was afraid of giving her heart again and losing herself all over. Soren listened without interruption. When she finished, he did not rush to reassure her. He did not make promises he could not guarantee. He simply said, "I don't want to be the kind of love you have to survive." That sentence settled into her like peace. Loving Soren did not feel like drowning or burning or aching. It felt like standing on solid ground after a long fall. And Alara realized something unsettling but freeing. Pain had taught her what peace looked like. Caleb resurfaced briefly in her life through an unexpected email. He congratulated her on a published essay that had begun circulating online. He spoke of pride, regret, growth. Alara read it once, then closed the message without replying. Not out of bitterness, but because she no longer needed the conversation. Some chapters did not require revisiting to be complete. Her mother noticed the change first. "You look like yourself again," Mrs. Mason said one morning, smiling softly. Alara considered that statement carefully. She realized she did not want to be who she was before heartbreak. That version of herself had loved without boundaries, trusted without protection, given without balance. She wanted to be better than that. As months passed, Alara's writing gained recognition. Invitations followed, readings, interviews, panels. People resonated with her honesty, with the way she spoke about love without romanticizing pain. She became a voice for those who had loved deeply and learned the hard way. At her first solo book launch, Alara stood behind the podium, hands steady, heart calm. She scanned the room and saw familiar faces, Naomi smiling proudly, her mother glowing with quiet joy, Aunt Miriam nodding knowingly. And then she saw Caleb. He stood near the back, hands in his pockets, watching her with an expression she recognized too well, regret mixed with admiration. For a moment, the past hovered between them. But it did not pull her backward. It only reminded her how far she had come. When their eyes met, Caleb smiled sadly. Alara returned the smile, not with longing but with peace. Soren stood nearby, not possessive, not threatened. Simply present. That presence meant more than any declaration ever could. Later that night, as the crowd thinned and the city quieted, Alara and Soren walked home together. She realized she was no longer waiting for something to go wrong. She was no longer bracing for disappointment. She was simply living. "I used to think love had to hurt to be real," she admitted softly. Soren shook his head. Love should feel like home. And in that moment, she understood the truth she had been circling for so long. Her love with Caleb had been intense, consuming, unforgettable. But it had been written in tears, not promises. It had taught her how deeply she could feel, and how much she should protect herself. It had been a lesson, not a destination. What she had now was different. It was quieter, stronger, built on choice, not fear, on effort, not endurance, on respect, not sacrifice. Love, Alara realized, was not proven through pain. It was proven through presence, consistency, and care. She did not regret her past. She honored it for shaping her. But she no longer confused suffering with devotion. That night, as she wrote the final lines of her new book, Alara smiled to herself. Some loves break you. Others rebuild you. And the bravest thing you can do is believe that you deserve the second kind. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and tell us where you're watching from. Your support helps these stories reach the hearts that need them most.